Okay, well, it is a new year, and that can feel like a lot of things for people. But I wanted to talk about pulling yourself out of a funk because we all have them. We all have them when we're trying to reach certain goals. We have them when we're working through really difficult things. We all experience funks differently, too. So for some people, that can look like anxiety. For other people, that can look like depression. For other people, it can look like just complete apathy or some kind of combination of all of the above, binge eating, all of that stuff can, or just ignoring stress altogether and pretending that we're fine, right? So the first thing that we want to do is identify when we are actually in a funk. And so, Carly, how do you experience that? Because I know for me, it can feel like I'm sabotaging myself and I kind of know it on a subconscious level, but I don't always know how to like resource myself or pull myself out of it. And so we kind of want to talk through that process because it is very common to experience that, especially when we're balancing hormones, especially when we've been struggling with symptoms for a really long time. And it feels like, gosh, am I ever going to get out of this? So, Carly, how do you like, what do funks look like for you?
Personally, it's taken me a while to see how like what kind of happens for me.
Right.
And normally I'll notice I'm starting to get maybe overwhelmed a little more easily or just a
Mhm.
little more agitated by small things because I can have the tendency where things will build up and I won't really recognize it subconsciously until
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling overwhelmed or just stressed out. Then I try to take a step back and recognize, like, okay, I think that there's something going on here. So, first, I'll try to look at my physical needs, like if I'm actually eating enough calories,
Yeah.
or if I'm getting enough sleep, if I'm getting like enough rest. And so
Yeah.
those things, and if the answer is yes, then I'll kind of move to like the next thing. Like, am I experiencing a consistent stressor in my life? And like, how am I dealing with that or coping with that? Um,
That's good.
and I'll just try to create more margin if I can to be able to process that, or more margin to have more time to myself,
Yes.
or like just kind of going back to the self-care basics. So, obviously that's different in different seasons of life, but I find that even just taking like 10 minutes or like 15 minutes and actually addressing myself and addressing my heart and being like, okay, like I acknowledge that there's something. Sorry, my dog just moved my computer.
Oh, it's okay.
Like
No, you're fine.
addressing that there is something happening, because even just addressing it like helps me so much in knowing like, oh, this is why I feel this way, and not giving an excuse for it, but like giving it value in a
Yep.
way. And then I can like properly move through it. But I find that even just recognizing what's happening is more than enough for me to feel okay and whatever
Yeah,
going on. It's almost like a self-acceptance in what's happening.
absolutely.
So,
No,
yeah.
that's really good. And you gave a lot of really good nuggets in there
I know,
because
it's like
you do. No, it's really good.
yeah.
So I hope those of you that are listening are taking some mental notes or actually writing that down because it does come down to like accepting, if we want to make change, right? If we want to move forward, it's like we have to accept the
Yeah.
things that feel like they're limiting, right? Or the things that we feel powerless to change, right? Those chronic stressors that it's like that's really the reason my joy is sapped, because my job is terrible right now, or because
Mhm.
my kid is going through something really hard, or we're struggling with something in our marriage, or like any of those things, right? And so if we don't acknowledge it and give even just 1 minute, like it doesn't have to be a large length of time, but just 1 minute to say, this is really impacting me. This really is impacting me in a negative way, right? So sometimes we're looking at the externals of like, I didn't get my exercise in, I didn't get all my water in, I didn't get all my greens in, I didn't, sleep well. But like our brain goes there right? As to all of the external things of why we can't accomplish X, right? Or why we can't accomplish Y,
It's
when
true.
really 99% of the time there is a valid reason. There's a valid roadblock to that, right? Maybe you got the flu over Christmas and it's taken you 3 weeks to get back on your feet, or you got the flu and then everybody in your house got sick, which totally happens and is totally life, you know? So it's that one, it's acknowledging where you are and where the limitations feel like where you feel like the limitations are. And acknowledging that that feels really hard, right? So it's taking that perspective of like, I'm failing at all of these things, so why even try,
Mhm.
to what is it that's really impacting me? Okay, maybe I'm having some significant stress because of a job situation, or, you know, any of the things that could really be impacting you. What is it
Mhm.
that I need to feel safe in my body and to be able to move forward, right? It's not going to be by performing all of those things, although addressing our nutrition and our sleep are a big part of that, right? But sometimes we have to address like the emotional roadblock of like why we're not able to do those things
Mhm.
before we can actually create action steps to start moving the needle, right? So it's kind of like we've had a couple conversations in the client chat, you know, different chats with people that are dealing with sickness or big stressors, and having
Mhm.
to kind of help them to understand that like your body is going to prioritize different things based off of what you're going through. So let's work with you
Wow.
so that
That's
we can
really
help
good.
you prioritize what it is that your body actually needs. So for the person that's recovering from the flu, right, and their kids have been sick and they're exhausted, they must be, even if they're not at that point in the program where we're really addressing like stress and sleep, right? Their priority needs to be different than somebody who isn't recovering from the flu, right? And so recognizing that again, it's a little bit less than checking the boxes, and it's a little bit more about what do we need to focus on right now for my mind, my body, my emotions to feel better and kind of move through the funk. So it sounds like for you, it's acknowledging that the funk is there, like why the funk is there.
Yeah.
I'm in a funk.
Uh-huh.
Here's why I'm in a funk. And then we can start to look at what our needs are. When we start to get to that place where it's like, okay, I recognize that I have a need. What are some of the roadblocks, like mental roadblocks that you've observed with clients or yourself that make it hard for us to actually ask for what we need? Because I think that that is a really big, for women especially, it's a big thing. Like we all can kind of get stuck there. So I'm curious what some of your observations are with that.
I'm thinking of two main things. And the first thing is guilt or feeling like shame if we
Mhm,
need something. Um, because we feel like it's gonna take from the people around us. So
mhm,
like in my marriage, if I'm having a hard day or whatever, like I can notice these thoughts of like, okay, well, I still need to do X, Y, and Z around the house or, with dinner or whatever it is, because my husband works full time. So I'm like, if I need a night off from cooking dinner, he's totally willing to do that. But it
mhm,
takes me like time to recognize, oh, I can ask him for those things. Like, I don't have to feel
mhm.
guilty. So I think guilt is one of the main things because we feel like we're almost being selfish. We're really like, we're just recognizing that we're human and we can
Yep,
receive like love from the people around us. And it doesn't need to be this like performance driven thing.
right.
So, which guilt a lot of times goes hand in hand with performance, and putting really
Definitely.
high expectations on ourselves. So, I feel like that's one of the main things. And then also, I think that there can be this lie that if we acknowledge our needs or if we take a minute and pause or slow down, it will inhibit our success or
Yeah.
it'll inhibit like our productivity. Whereas like we're not machines, you know, we weren't meant to constantly go, go, go. And so in the long run, if we don't pause and take those moments, we'll just experience burnout.
Yep.
Um, and so I think that that can be a common mindset that I've definitely experienced before too, where it's like, well, if I take a day, you know, and pause, or I don't plan anything today, then that's going to set me back on my goals. Whereas really, like, there's a reason that we're meant to have a day of rest because it recharges us, you know, and we're actually able to
Right.
step back and recognize like that, yeah, we're human and we need that.
Absolutely. Yep. If we feel like we can't ask for what we need without feeling a sense of shame, usually that shame comes from somewhere. And most of the time, at least in my conversations with people, it's rarely like, for example, if a woman feels like, oh, I can never ask my husband for that, sometimes it is because of their spouse in the past has made that feel like an unsafe interaction, right? To where they can't actually ask for help. But most of the time, in my observation, it comes from way before that, like experiences in
Yeah.
childhood where it wasn't safe to ask for things, or you were shamed for not being able to do things on your own, or for those of us that were raised in the 80s where it was like, we got up and fed ourselves breakfast and got to school and did our homework on it. You know what I mean? Like where there wasn't a lot of maybe parental interactions that established that safety. We have to learn that. And that means that, we have to realistically look at why am I so resistant to asking for what I need. I know I had my own personal reasons for that, and you had your own personal reasons for that, and other women in the group have their own personal reasons for that. And it is a real thing because it is a construct in our mind that we have to allow to be taken down if
Mhm.
we're going to reach our goal, right?
Yeah.
And one of those big goals that we all should have for ourselves is what support do I need, and how am I going to be a better communicator about accessing the support that I need? Like what are the internal resources I need to
Mhm.
have to get really good at asking for what I need? Instead of allowing shame to be the loudest voice in my head. But it's a real thing. And I think we have to realize that sometimes we get through, like we're in a process, right? And this, I think, would apply to anything. This could apply to a therapeutic process where you're in therapy, you're going to counseling to address an issue, right? Or you've started working out and you're going on the treadmill every single day, or you're in, the Happy Hormones or Hormone Wellness Academy coaching program, and you get to a point where you feel stuck or like I'm not making progress. Most of the time that's not the case. Most of the time there's something kind of going on below the surface that we need to look at because the body we can't outpace the body's ability to heal. And that applies to everything. Emotions, our physical health, our hormone health, everything. And so it's what's going on below the surface that's creating that's a linchpin in keeping you stuck. And this is often why when people, they probably get annoyed with us, but when they're messaging us in chat and they're expecting a really simple answer, right? Like, I'm doing this, I'm doing my greens, I'm walking, I'm getting water, I'm sleeping, and I don't understand while I'm stuck. We're now looking at the bigger picture of like stress and nervous system. What are you thinking about yourself? What are you thinking about this situation? And those habits are a lot harder to break because they've been there for a really, really long time. And so it's not really about, I just have to be more consistent or I just have to work harder at X, Y, and Z. It's no, let's do some work on the inside to
Mhm.
figure out what's going on in our internal world, in our internal dialogue that is creating some sort of dysfunction, like either in my nervous system or in my emotions or my body that's keeping me stuck. And that just takes time, right? To figure that part of the process out. And the reason why this matters when we're talking about like doing the harder work of our like emotions and our mental thought processes is because that absolutely has an impact on your hormones, namely cortisol. Um, our body will respond to the thoughts that we think. Um, And the thoughts that we think will trigger physiologic responses. And so unless we're working on both ends of that HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, unless we're working on both parts of that, both parts of the communication, right? Um, we're going to hit those places where we feel stuck. And we don't want you to feel that way. We don't want you to feel like, I have no support here. I don't know how to get over this hurdle. But we do have to look at both. We have to look at why that's happening, and if I'm ignoring a significant stressor, like I will just tell you, my cycle was weird this month. And part of that, it wasn't because I was ignoring a stressor. I was experiencing a stressor and actively trying to process it, but it
Mhm.
was stressful on my body, even though I was doing all of the things that I know how to do. And I just know that sometimes that makes a funky cycle for me. And I know why that's happening, and I don't get discouraged anymore because I realize that's my body's way of prioritizing its own healing. The priority was we have to deal with this perceived immediate stressor. And then my question became, instead of, oh no, I'm so stressed out, that's going to throw me off my protocols and all the things, instead of doing that, which would have been my MO, a year or two ago, it's what do I need to resource right now to move through this stress as smoothly as I can, as gracefully as I can, with as much support as I need, so that this doesn't become a chronic issue, because it's when we ignore it and we're doing unhealthy things, like, and I'll just use my own habits here because I'm not shaming anybody, but like when we get really stressed out, what are the two things that we typically do? We either shut down our digestion or we overeat,
Mhm.
right? For me, my digestion usually gets shut down to where I'm not eating thing, like, because I'm just not hungry. I don't have any hunger cues when I'm stressed out. So if I allowed that to continue, that would obviously make it very difficult for me to meet my personal hormone goals, which require me eating certain things, right? So I have to address the physiologic stress response and give myself that compassion to move through it and not allow myself to get frustrated with the fact that I'm having a very normal response to stress.
Yeah, because the thoughts and emotions are they're so tied to
Mhm.
what's happening in our bodies.
Yep,
And a
absolutely.
lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us have probably gotten to this state of imbalance because we've ignored things that our bodies are saying? And so
100%.
that's why we try to emphasize listening to your body and what it's telling us. And in the healing process, it is a process for the body. And that's the thing, is like, we want the microwave solution, because it's
Yep,
easier.
yep,
We all want that, let's just be real.
yep,
But yeah, it takes time, like, for the body to adjust and catch up to, maybe even if we've changed our mindset, like, it can still take our body time to adjust to that and know that
absolutely.
we're safe and we're okay.
Absolutely. Yep. And so if you're at that place in any part of your journey, I know any part of your journey where you're like, I'm feeling stuck, I want to actually encourage you to do a quick exercise. And by quick, I mean, like, I'm not telling you to go find a therapist and spend 9 months hashing through this process. If you need that, do that. But one thing that really helps me, when I become aware that I'm like, oh, I'm definitely having a stress response to something and it's creating this like negative thought loop, or shame is starting to come in, and now I'm not doing the things that I know that I need to do to take care of myself because that helps me to feel better, then what I would encourage you to do, if that resonates with you, is just take literally maybe 5 minutes at the most. You might need more time, but I would say 5 minutes is really good. And just brain dump all the things that are stressing you out. I'm worried about X because of Y. I'm worried about
Yeah.
this school thing that's coming up that I don't know how we're going to handle it, or whatever. There's two reasons why this is really beneficial. One is because you're actually taking it out of stuck in processing mode and you're actively starting to process it through
Mhm.
your body. That's the first one. The second one is anytime you cross the midline of your body, this is you have two hemispheres of the brain. basically, and they both communicate with each other, but they also communicate with your nervous system by crossing the midline of communication. And anytime you do that, so what I try to do, I know this sounds weird, but ever since I learned this, it actually does make a difference. I will turn my journal to where I have to cross the
Mhm.
midline of my body when I'm writing. Some people are used to like, it being on the right side of you if you're right-handed and but then you're only on the right side. So if I move it just to where like you can see this is like right about midline, right?
Mhm.
I'm moving across the midline of my body while I'm brain dumping. I know that sounds really dumb, but it is such a simple trick to like anything I can do to cross that midline is going to actually help this stress get unstuck from my limbic system and start moving through the right and left hemisphere.
Interesting.
It's the same principle as EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So it's the same thing, bilateral stimulation. That can be really helpful. So spending about 5 minutes to just brain dump. I'm stressed about this. I feel shame about this thing. I'm not losing weight like I wanted to. I'm not seeing the change in my hormones like I wanted to. Whatever that is, just get it on paper and don't judge what you're feeling. Do not put a filter on the stuff
Mhm.
that's coming out. That doesn't serve us like at all, right? And then I find once I've gotten it out, like on paper, right? Or talking to a friend even, then I'm able to start problem solving or like, oh, that doesn't really need to be on my plate. Or like I had a situation last week where I was like, oh, I just need to email that person and ask them a question. Like I can get out of my head and actually do the thing that I need to do to feel supported right now. That can be really, really helpful. So again, you're doing just a really quick action to get it out of the limbic system processing and into processing. So that
Right.
can be super helpful, especially when it comes to regulating our hormones, because again, there's no way for that stress response not to impact our progesterone, which then, of course, impacts our serotonin and our mood and our sleep and our thought processes. All of that, like all of that stress response will impact all of it. And then the third thing I want to say about, when we're talking about getting out of a funk, it's accessing support. And so sometimes when we become aware that like, oh, I definitely have internal resistance to like asking for help, life will eventually break you of that if we stay in that place because you will push yourself to a point where you have no option but to ask people for help, right? I'd prefer for people to get there sooner so that we're not like at our breaking point, on the floor, like, "Somebody help me." What is that commercial that's like, "I've fallen and I can't get
Oh,
up," and you're pushing whatever the, like, life alert
yeah.
button, I think is what it is. Like, I've been there where I'm like, I allowed myself, because of that resistance that we talked about, to not ask for help, and that's like, don't do that. If I can just it's really it's a lot harder to learn it that way than it is to, when you become aware of that resistance, to say, "I'm gonna do the thing that makes me wanna cringe the most," which is talking to somebody about it and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this part of the process. I need help, and my mind's in the gutter. I don't know how to recover from, the flu knocked us out, and now all I want is carbs." Like, "Okay, cool. Let's get you some carbs, and
Yeah.
then we'll talk about how to rebalance that out?" That was just kind of another thought I had when we're talking about kind of the 3 things to pull out of the funk, right?
I love that tool because and I didn't know about the, like, crossing, like, I did not know about that at all, but I do know the times I have brain dumped and written it all out, I'm like, "I feel so much better." It's
Yes.
just yeah, because then I like what you mentioned about the, like, negative feedback loop, it will stay in our brains, you know?
Yep,
And,
until it gets out.
yeah, until it gets out, and something I've to add to that that I've been trying to do is if I feel like shame or a lie or criticism towards myself or something else, I will literally try to speak out what's true rather
That's
than
good.
just think what's true, like, because
Yeah,
that it doesn't it's not as beneficial unless I, like,
right.
speak out loud, and that helps a lot too, but I'm gonna do that brain dump today. I need that,
Do it.
so
Do it. Yeah, I forgot how much I love journaling, and I've started getting really consistent with it again because it helps me so much.
Mhm.
And again, it's just such a simple trick, and I don't know why. Like the thought literally occurred to me 2 weeks ago. I'm like, oh, if I just like turn this, I'll be
Yeah.
crossing the midline, and like maybe that will help me. Just a
Mhm.
little bit of transitioning, right? So if you're feeling in that place, whether you're, wherever you are in this process, I just want to encourage you to maybe take one or two of those nuggets and start there, right? We don't have to have the whole process finished in a day, but we did want to talk about that because honestly, you guys, like I have so many friends that I've talked to in the last week that are like, I feel like I'm still recovering from December, like emotionally, because either, there was a lot of holiday events or there were big things happening in their family or sickness or something that really was just creating a lot of stress, right? And so if you're in that place and you're finding it's like, I can't pull myself up from my with my bootstraps, can't pull myself up by my bootstraps. Sorry, I was getting there. One of these tools should be helpful in kind of starting to get out of that unstuck place. So we
Mhm.
wanted to provide this, as a training exercise or just encouragement to you that everybody gets in a funk sometimes. We just don't want to stay there. And so we want to help you move through that as smoothly and courageously as you can, and realizing like again it's a human experience to get in a funk, right? And so and rarely do we pull ourselves out of it by just trying harder. That doesn't usually do it.